Welcome, welcome, welcome to Purpose and Promises, where we bring you inspiration for everyday life. If you have been here before, welcome back. So happy to have you back. So happy to see you. If this is your first time visiting Purpose and Promises, we're so happy that you stopped by to visit us and to get some inspiration. And if you look at the information below, you will see our website, our Instagram page, and our Facebook. You can follow us. Feel free to go to the website, read the other devotionals, share to anyone that God places on your heart to share with. I do want to say something about the postings in 2026. So one of the things and one of my goals for 2026 is to be more is to be more consistent. And in the past, I have not been consistent with these devotional blog posts. So for 2026, I am committing to once a month, you will receive a devotional blog post. So you can expect once a month to get an inspirational devotional blog post. And with that said, I am very, very excited about the inspirational devotional that I want to share with you today. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into this word. So we're going to start with the base scripture for the inspirational devotional. And it is from Isaiah chapter 6, verses 5 through 8. And I read from the New International Version. And it reads, "Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live amongst people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." Then one of the seraphim flew to me with the live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am. Send me." Today I want to encourage you, to inspire you with the message from the title, "Here I Go." Here I go. Sometimes a phrase, a moment, a song from culture helps to frame a spiritual truth. And for this one, the year was 1995 when Mystical released his hit song, "Here I Go." Now, there's a line in the rap, "Here I Go," that says, "I heard that you were looking for me. Here I go. Here I go. Here I go. Here I go." Okay, y'all gotta stop. But in all seriousness, that line, it captures something powerful. It reflects the moment when someone realizes they are being sought, they are being called, and they choose to respond. At some point in life, everyone faces that kind of moment. There are times when we begin to see that God may be calling us towards something or inviting us to step forward in a new way. In Isaiah chapter 6, God is looking for someone too. Now, before I dig into verses 5 through 8, it helps to have a little background on Isaiah chapter 6. And the chapter began with these words. "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on the throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple." To understand the weight of that moment, it helps to know a little about King Uzziah. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he ruled Jerusalem for 52 years. He was generally considered a good king. He led Israel's military into victories over the Philistines and other enemies, and scripture tells us that he did right in the eyes of the Lord. However, his story does not end there, and his life takes a tragic turn. Plot twist, right? Later in that same chapter that highlights how Uzziah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, a shift happens. Scripture tells us that after he became powerful, he became prideful and transgressed against God by entering into the temple to burn incense on the altar of incense. Because of this act, God struck Uzziah with leprosy, and he lived with that leprosy until the day he died. Now, you may be asking, why is this act so serious that Uzziah was struck with leprosy because of it? Well, I'm happy you asked, right? Some Bible historians say that Uzziah was in the temple trying to offer incense on the altar at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And that responsibility was only reserved for the high priest. So what Uzziah did was not a mistake. It was overstepping a boundary clearly set by God. Uzziah was so prideful and he was so full of pride that he thought that he was above God's law and that he could do anything that he wanted to do. And that is why he was struck with leprosy. David Guzik, he reflects on this moment in his commentary on Isaiah chapter 6. And he writes, so to say in the year King Uzziah died is to say a lot. It is to say in the year a great and wise king died, but it is also to say in the year a great and wise king who had a tragic end died. Isaiah had great reasons to be discouraged and disillusioned at the death of King Uzziah, because a great king had passed away and because his life ended tragically. Now that commentary gives us some insight into Isaiah's mindset when the vision happens, right? The nation had lost a long-standing king, and the end of his life was both complicated and tragic. Yet, even in the middle of that uncertainty, Isaiah sees something that reframes everything. He sees the Lord seated on the throne. In the midst of everything that was happening, God was still on the throne. He was still looking for someone to send. Now, the Hebrew word for Lord used in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 is Adonai, and that means master or Lord. It is the plural of Adon, which derives from the meaning Lord, master, or owner. Adonai appears about 448 times in the Hebrew scriptures as reverential address to the one true God. It underscores God's absolute authority, covenant faithfulness, and relational nearness. Dr. Tony Evans explains it this way. Since God, Adonai, is the absolute ruler and owner, our response to his name comes through surrender and submission. In other words, because Adonai is ruler and Lord seated on the throne, the response is to submit my will and plans to his, my struggles, my worries, and triumphs to him. You can lay it all before God and trust God with it because he is in control and he knows what is best for you. Since God does not change, Malachi 3:6, and he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, Hebrews 13:8. The same God who was seated on the throne then is the same God seated on the throne now. God has not moved. He has not shifted. He is still in control. Now that you got some background, let's get back to the main course, verses 5 through 8, right? Now, many of us who grew up in church are familiar with Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. It is often quoted and celebrated. Isaiah hears the voice of the Lord asking, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And Isaiah responds, here I am, send me. In many church settings, that verse is used to highlight Isaiah's courage and willingness to answer God's call. The focus often lands on the phrase, send me. But as I spent time meditating on this passage, something else began to stand out to me. What stood out to me was not the send me, but the here I am. Before Isaiah ever says yes to the assignment, he first says yes to being seen. I'm going to say that again. Before Isaiah ever says yes to the assignment, he first says yes to being seen. Now, don't get it twisted. Isaiah's here I am story doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with collapse. Remember, we just discussed the uncertainty and the discouragement and the disillusionment with King Uzziah's death. And on top of that, standing in the manifest presence of God, Isaiah becomes deeply aware of his own sin, his limitations, and the brokenness of the people around him. He feels unworthy, unqualified, and undone. Who else has felt like that before? I know I've had those moments, right? Isaiah's response is raw and honest. Woe to me, for I am ruined. The more clearly Isaiah saw God, the more clearly he saw the reality of his own condition. But God, but God does not leave Isaiah in that place. A seraphim touches Isaiah's lips with the coal from the altar and declares, your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. God addresses Isaiah's deepest fears not by dismissing it, but by redeeming it. Forgiveness and redemption changes everything. Redemption means that through the blood, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the price has been paid to set you free. We were in bondage, Christ paid the price, and now we're no longer a slave to whatever had us in bondage. We're free. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is like a debt being completely canceled. We were guilty, Christ paid the price, Christ paid our penalty, and now our record is clear. When we are forgiven by God, we carry no liability, zero liability. Just think of it like this. Imagine if every single financial debt you currently have is being wiped away entirely to zero. That is what forgiveness does for our soul. So what changed was not Isaiah's past, not his personality, and not his ability. What changed was his standing. He did not suddenly become worthy, as he was already worthy in God's eyes. He became forgiven. He became redeemed. And it's the same with us. As believers, we are adopted as God's precious child, and we are worthy solely because we are his, according to Ephesians 1:5, not because of what we did or what we did not do. So when you know that 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 you're forgiven and you're redeemed, something shifts. You walk differently. You talk differently. You start to see yourself differently. You carry yourself differently. You can stand tall. You can be bold. You can be courageous. When you know that you're forgiven and redeemed, you don't allow anyone to try to hold your past against you or try to disqualify you because of past mistakes, because you understand that who you are is not defined by who you were, and you're too focused on who you are becoming. And I want to say that just one more time to where it hits you. Who you are is not defined by who you were. For Isaiah, forgiveness gave birth to confidence, and not confidence in himself, but confidence in the God who redeemed him. Confidence in Yahweh, the covenant-keeping God. Confidence in Adonai, Lord and Master. So when Isaiah says, here I am, he isn't presenting a perfect version of himself. He is not saying, here's the fully qualified me. He's simply presenting himself honestly before God and saying, here is the imperfect me, the forgiven me, the still being healed me, the broken but redeemed me. He is saying, I know who I am, and I know where I stand, not in my own righteousness, but in God's mercy. He's also saying something many of us can relate to. I'm not where I want to be, but Lord knows I'm not where I used to be. The words, here I am, are a declaration of identity and a declaration of location. And this notion echoes another moment in Scripture. In Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sinned, and God called out to them asking, where are you? God was not asking for their physical location. The question pointed to something much deeper. Sin disrupted Adam and Eve's sense of identity, intimacy, and belonging. Sometimes we struggle to step into what God is calling us to because where we are has reshaped who we think we are. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes we struggle to step into what God is calling us to because where we are has reshaped who we think we are. This can lead us to an identity crisis because who we are is who God says we are, not who we think we are, not who other people told us we are. Isaiah declaring, "Here I am," is choosing to stand in forgiveness instead of shame. It's the courage to be fully present before God, not because you are flawless or perfect, but because you are forgiven and redeemed. Before you ever say, "Send me," may you first learn to say, "Here I am." Not the perfect version of yourself, but the version who trusts that God's mercy is enough to meet you where you are. And that is often where the journey of being sent truly begins. So the next time you sense God stirring your heart, calling you to something greater, asking you to move forward in faith, remember this. The most powerful words you may ever say to God are not "Send me." They are simply, "Here I am." May you be blessed. May you have a blessed month. May you have a blessed year. May you have a blessed life. Until we see each other again, I will see you in April with some new inspiration. Bye and be blessed.